Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Scott, and today on the podcast, I have my friend Brad Stone. More about him in a few moments. And before I do that, a few things I want to mention. If you've been listening to podcasts, you've heard this. I want you to go and sign up for our email list because we have an epic trip or get together coming up in September. So September 2022. We're going to do some really cool things, some hard things. We're going to get instruction and talks from top people in the world in their area. And so I want you to make sure you go to brotherhoodfatherhood.com/events and just put your email in. We will email you as soon as we know. I think this thing's going to sell out really fast. We're only taking 30 to 45 men. So brotherhoodfatherhood.com/events. And then I also wanted to give a quick shout out to my buddy, Gerald at Loam Coffee. They are an awesome coffee company. He sends me coffee every month, and it's really good. And it's very freshly brewed. And basically for every bag of coffee that's bought, they have some give back to the mountain bike community, just get kids into it and lower income folks to be able to go outside and enjoy amazing activities. One of my very, very favorite activities that I do out in the woods outside of shooting guns, which Brad and I were talking about just a minute. How are you doing, Brad? Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I didn't do a bio on you, but you are hailing from a life as an ex-pro baseball player, gym owner, and father. Sound about right?
In the elevator speech right there, that hits it all on the head.
Yeah, we've known each other for maybe 2.5, 3 years. It's been a bit.
At least we're getting closer to 4 at this point. We're getting old, Scott.
That's awesome. Oh, you don't have to remind me. You don't have to remind me at all. So for all of you just joining, Brad and I we were kind of doing show and tell of our firearms. So we're having a great time prior to this. We have a lot in common, and we probably could talk about that for the whole time that we're on here. But really, I want to dive right into some of the topics that Brad and I discussed beforehand, because I think it's very relevant to a lot of the men in the group, and that's kind of working yourself through a divorce. And I mean, when I met you, Brad, now you're saying 4 years ago, you were married, I believe you have 2 kids,
2 kids, boy and a girl, 7 and 4.
Yeah. So things happen
great
fast
kids.
Now. Yeah.
Yes.
And now you're married to someone else. And that's kind of the story that we want to talk about, because kind of watching you from a distance go through that. And I think you'd even kind of reached out to me. We talked kind of on a different professional level, but it was still there. You went through some really hard times, brother.
It was there were some definite dark days. Life got really, really challenging mid 2018. There was hindsight, like there's writing on the wall that like things are not on the trajectory that they need to be on. And to be blunt, a lot of that blame falls on my lap. I am a big Jocko Willink fan, and Extreme Ownership is one of my all-time favorite reads. If you haven't, shout out Jocko. Maybe I'll do maybe he'll hear and I'll get a chance to do his show.
Awesome.
He's very, very good. For those of you that don't know him, like he's very much like the buck stops with me, and Extreme Ownership is the name of one of his books. And that is exactly what it is. Take ownership over everything that's going on. What could I have done what was within my power to either change or create different outcomes? And sitting where I am now, there were definitely things that I could have done differently to potentially salvage that relationship, or at least mitigate fallout later down the road. Things really, they came to what would be like the final straw in November of 2018. She made some choices I don't approve of, and I won't badmouth her at all. She is still a very good mother, and we get along now better than we ever did when we were married. But we were incompatible, and there were some things that were irreconcilable differences, I believe is the legal term. So we parted ways. I actually lost my kids for a while. And I don't know how much we talked about that, but it was there was some really, really hard days there in the beginning. So the tail end of 2018, and our divorce kind of dragged on for a little while, I think, in some of the different, divorced fathers groups and men's groups that I'm in. Like, I kind of got off easy with about a year, just shy of 18 months, start to finish. Um, but, especially with like looming COVID and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
things were just not moving smoothly in the world. So I kind of got off easy in that regard, where it didn't take 2-3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and stuff like that. But it was truly the hardest thing I've ever had to go through.
Yeah. When you first started this process to 2018, when there was some things you started to notice some things and things were going downhill. Did you have the same mindset, like this extreme ownership? Were you paying attention to Jocko at that moment? And if so, how did that change as you were going through this?
He was not someone I discovered until I really was on the tail end of everything. I mental health, especially for us men, like, it does not get the respect that it deserves. It's more of a punchline, honestly, in society, than it should be. So there was a lot of therapy going through and trying to figure out, all right, what the hell is going on? Who am I? And, you know, mental health is the mind is an incredible thing. And, to get fairly personal, I will not fairly personal. This is really personal. I was, my father was abusive when I was growing up. And that was something that, like, I won't go as far as to say it, like the repressed memories, like craziness with like the satanic scare in the 80s and crazy, like I was under hypnosis and I remembered this. It wasn't anything like that. It was something that I knew was always there, but I kind of talk about it like I had this box of all the shit that went on between my father and I allowed life to help me pile stuff on top of it to keep that box closed, but it never stopped making noise. Um, and looking back now, like that I've worked through all of that mess, I realized how much of stuff that I've done in my past that, you know, I can't change. And I'm honestly sitting where I am with 2 kids and a beautiful wife, in a gym that's doing well. I don't really know that I would, but that the lure of like being in the big leagues and making a boatload of money is, it definitely weighs on you. But, it definitely contributed to kind of the end of my career. I drank more than I should have. I didn't take care of my body the way that I probably should have. And I can see how some of that was me self-medicating to try and numb a lot of that. But sidebar, we'll save that talk for the next time we chat on this. But to get back to like our point with, the divorce and stuff, I did a lot of therapy. For a while there, I was going twice a week, just to try. All right, what, the emergence of like, all right, I have to actually confront all the stuff that happened between my father and I have to process and I have to deal, because the cycle of abuse has to end somewhere, and I'm not going to allow my kids to carry my water. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. But Jocko was somebody that I discovered in that time frame. I was doing a lot of different reading. I'm a big fan of audiobooks and stuff. When I'm sitting at the desk working, I like to have stuff in the background. And I like to listen to podcasts and stuff at night. So Jocko's stuff is one that I happened upon. And I was like, this is a mentality that I can really embrace. I definitely have leaned into the, baseball being the sport that it is. There was always, you can only control what you can control. I can throw the right pitch at the right time, in the right location to the right hitter, and he can still hit it out of the park. Like,
Right.
once the ball leaves my hand, that's all out of my control. But did I do everything in front of that release to maximize my opportunity for success? And that's something, as a father and as a gym owner, that I've really, really leaned into. But Jocko's stuff it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm curious. At the beginning of this journey, were you playing? Did you ever find yourself playing the victim? like this is happening to me. Oh, this is all, my wife's fault. I'm just curious of kind of that emotional and the way that you kind of explain some things in your own head. Did you go there, or were you always kind of like, I have a part in this?
Um, yes, absolutely. Humans are pretty interesting creatures. We are really the only animal capable of self pity. You don't ever see a wolf in the wild that's like, oh, woe is me. What am I going to do? But part of having the brain that we do, some of that stuff creeps in, and I'm no different. I'm not superhuman. I'm not anything special. I absolutely wrestled with some of those thoughts and how could she do this to me? Like this, woe is me. And
Yeah.
that thought has 100% crossed through my mind. But being in therapy with someone who was very, very good. I had a female therapist, and her name was Julie. She was fantastic. When those things would emerge, she'd be like, "You have to remember, like this is not just something that happened to you. Like it's like you're in it. Like you have to. Right? Could you have done something different? Maybe, maybe not. But you can't get caught in that victimhood mentality."
Yeah, that's really good. It sounds like she's an exceptional therapist. You kind of, was it a scary process thinking I need to go get a therapist? I think men need to hear a little bit about that to be a little more at comfort. If we can kind of unwrap what that looked like for you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And initially, I met her as she's a relationship counselor. And so we did some marriage counseling. And when everything absolutely came to a head, she was someone that she knew all the background. I didn't have to start from scratch. So I had an advantage there, without a doubt. But it would have been just as easy for me to, tuck my tail and run and retreat. So the vulnerability and the ability to have some introspection is not easy. It really, really is not, and it's uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable. But I think my athletic background of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and the fact that I was a business owner, like you have to take a lot of risks. Like I'm not a risk averse person to begin with. So that definitely played into my hand a little bit and allowed me to make that choice easier than probably some guys will. But it's an act of, in my opinion, knowing when you need help is more of an act of bravery than trying to just soldier on alone, face first into a hurricane. Like that's just foolhardy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good quote. I don't know if it's yours or someone else's. It's really good. So I'm kind of thinking of the men who are looking at their situation right now, and divorce is either inevitable or they kind of see it coming, and maybe there's some time to reconcile and figure things out, and maybe there isn't. What would be some advice that you would give those men? And it can be as many points as you want.
Um, if you really, really want something, it's worth fighting for. Even if you're the only one fighting. My situation in particular, there's two extra lives that are intermixed into all the decisions that are made. So if it was just her and I and there were no kids and it was like, all right, let's divide up assets and just go our separate ways and never see each other again, that's one thing. Like sometimes people are just not right for each other. We had two kids, and particularly for men in that situation, like if you think it's worth fighting for, fight tooth and nail. One lesson that I learned, which is part of some of the things that I made mistakes on, is that you have to show your wife that she's a priority. She was relatively low on my list. The kids were the number one, which circling back a little bit to some of my previous points, having had an abusive father and a unique upbringing, my mom, she's gay. She's been with her partner for 32 years now, 33, something like that. So I would say particularly coming through the 80s and 90s, like that was an unconventional upbringing.
Yeah.
Um, I was hell bent on making sure that my children never had to deal with any of the kind of stuff that I had to, which put my now ex-wife on the back burner. We also,
Mm.
I opened a gym, and I had already not made my goal of making the major leagues playing baseball, which is a lofty, lofty goal to begin with. But in my mind, I had already failed at one career. I was like, all right, now I'm choosing this. I won't fail again. So that puts her behind that. So I did my part to make sure that consciously or subconsciously, she knew she wasn't a priority. Um, that's a shift. Again, hindsight, I could have easily made. And it is a lesson. I like the phrases. And the last quote was mine. This one is not mine. I'm not sure who said it, but lessons learned in blood are not soon forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Those mistakes that I made in my previous relationship, I am not repeating in my current one. So make sure your wife knows that she's a priority. If you want her, show her. Don't just tell
Yeah.
her, show her. That would be probably my biggest piece of advice. And know that if you take these steps, it may still not work out. Like, she may be gone. She may not want to receive anything that you're giving or trying to give, but you can always look back, and when you wash your face or brush your teeth before you go to bed, you look that guy in the mirror. You can honestly say to yourself, I did everything I could.
Yeah.
And that's priceless. You can't say anything more. And it is truly priceless to be able to say, all right, I tried everything that I could and I gave it my 100% God's best. And if it doesn't work, then now you move to the next stage and you deal.
Yeah. I mean, several things that you said really resonated, fighting for it, even if your partner is not reciprocating, because, hey, we may have done a lot of damage prior and have a lot to overcome. The kid thing is where it gets really complicated and messy and sticky. And I want to kind of go into that, but, I love the message of, this is what I didn't do right, or where I may have fallen short in the first marriage, and I'm not going to let that happen again. And it's real interesting you're in this situation, because I've talked with men before, and I've said, like, look, no matter what, your wife actually needs to come before your kids. And the argument that I get is, but she's not my kid's wife. So now my kids are more important because they came before her. I'd like you to address that a little bit from your perspective, because I don't have that perspective. I'm on my first marriage, and we're very happy. And so I want to hear about your perspective to that kind of recant from that message or that saying that I said, is like, no matter what, your wife needs to come in front of your kids.
It was honestly a hard pill to swallow. It was not an easy transition. Really nothing I've done over the past few years has been easy. And, especially with COVID, like, I won't pretend I'm the only one that's had stuff that wasn't easy. But making that mental shift was not a light switch. I didn't make that choice. You flip the switch, the light goes on, it stays on. It wasn't anything like that. It was more in line with like the Kaizen principle. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Go ahead and
All right.
share it though.
Yeah. For those of you that are not, it's actually Japanese business philosophy. It's a culmination of incremental changes result in large dramatic change. The example is, like, if you get 1% better a day over the course of a year, you're 365% better. If you tell somebody you got to get 300% better, that's huge. It's an insurmountable, unfeasible, unmanageable goal. But if you say, hey, today get 1% better at something, and then tomorrow get 1% better at something, that you can do. And the decision making and lifestyle that I now live is more akin to that, where it was, all right, a choice presents itself. Previous mindset, Brad would take this road. I know that I need to take this road. And just like a snowball or an avalanche, you make more of those decisions day by day. They get easier and they become more automatic.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the point where it's like, you know, and one of my favorite things on the planet absolutely is putting my son to bed. He's 4. He's right at that age where he's still got that little bit of baby voice. And so I'll snuggle him and he's like, his last thing he says before bed almost every night is, "Daddy, best friends?" And I'll just say, "Best friends." And he just kind of tucks in, and that's pretty much it. I know he's on his way out. So there are days when that happens, and then he's like, "I'm getting a wild hair up my ass," and I decided I'm not going to tuck my head. I want to bounce and jump on my bed. And I'm like, "Hey, son, it's almost 8 o'clock. Like, it's time for Daddy Courtney time. Like, so you gotta go to sleep." So instead of stretching that out for an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes he's up for a freaking hour. It's like, hey, he will wear himself out. He will get plenty of sleep. He's got plenty of food. He's going to be fine. But this relationship requires nurturing. And I've made a commitment to this woman and I'm going to honor that. So I'm going to let him do his thing. He'll be okay. I'm going to go tend to this garden over here. That's,
Oh,
I think a pretty good example of like those choices there.
it's beautifully stated. And you brought up a few points that I think are worth repeating. Your kid is well fed, well taken care of, and having a little wild time and not everything being in control or perfect is completely okay because he's safe. And to be able to say, okay, I'm going to switch. A lot of parents, married, divorced, I think even harder when it's divorced, because you want to make sure your kid knows how much you love them and you're never leaving them. And then sometimes there's this competition of who loves me the most. That can definitely be an epidemic that happens within a marriage or a broken marriage. But and then also speaking, it sounds like you actually say to him, I am going to have time with, I think you said Courtney, my wife.
Yeah.
And I think it's so incredibly important to speak those things. How we treat our spouses is the model for how our kids are going to interact and treat their spouses.
Oh, on the nose. Absolutely. I am a huge believer that not only do you teach people like how to treat you, but particularly for our children and as men, which random side fact, I was reading some stuff today, like, children across the board tend to exhibit more of their father's genetic traits than their mother, even though we were supposed to get 50-50. More of the father's traits end up manifesting. Like, just kind of a fun little fact, but also kind of speaks to this conversation. As men, like, we have a profound role in teaching our children how to behave and how to do things and creating an example for future relationships. In my particular little bubble, all right, this one has already ended. Like, your mother is your mother, Gus. Like, and I will love her as the mother of my children forever. I don't share that romantic love with her anymore. That is something I share with Courtney, who is your stepmom. They sometimes call her, mama and stuff like that. But like, hey, Courtney, this is my wife, and this is how you treat people that are important to you. And just like I mentioned earlier, like, it's one thing to tell people, it's another thing to show. And the actions, and that old phrase, actions speak louder than words, has always been true and will continue to be true. And cliches are cliches for a reason. But showing them this is how you act. And I think even more importantly than my son, for my daughter, like, this is how, I don't care if she ends up being gay. I don't fucking care. Like, and my mom's gay. So, but assuming she's going to end up in a normal heterosexual relationship, this is how men should treat you. And
absolutely.
The women tend to, they say you marry guys that are like your dad. And Courtney, my current wife, that's very, very true. I'm a lot like my father-in-law. So it's kind of a very on the nose point there with her, but showing her, like, have this level of expectation that you will be treated in a certain way and don't settle for anything less. And I have a profound duty to show her, like, this is what a good man looks like. This is how a good man treats his wife. These are things that are not like, oh, that'd be nice if he was 6'3" and treated me with respect. Like, those are givens. Like, he's going to treat you with respect. and he's going to show you love day in and day out. That's something that I don't take lightly, especially
Yeah.
for her.
I think that's such an important point is if you have a girl, she literally is going to innately search out or be attracted to men who act the way you treat your family as a father. And that is such a good barometer. And I also know, I'm a boy dad, that the way I treat my wife will be repeated by my sons. And so they know it's her above all any other person on this earth. And I will serve her. I will fight for her. I will be on her side. And I do that. It's a really great built-in accountability tool. Like if I don't do that right, they're not going to treat their wives right. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the legacy is overused, but it's a legacy that continues to go on. And our only hope is that we can improve the way that we were brought up, and then that will continue to work generation after generation. We just keep evolving into a family that is awesome instead of devolving every evolution, right? Every generation. So it's so incredibly profound the way you kind of wrap that up and shared that. Let's talk about how you mentioned this, but I really kind of want to drive a point home. How you talk about and relate with your ex-wife around your kids.
Um, so her name is Katie. So like at basketball games and stuff, she's not from St. Louis, and where I'm at in St. Louis, it is. They say Reno is like the biggest little city in the world. St. Louis is, and we got to give them a run for their money. And it
Mm-hmm.
is almost incestuous the way everyone seems to know everyone else. And if I don't know you, but I know where you went to high school, I know people that know you. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is a very, very small town in a city. And it's the only place. I've lived all over the country. It's the only place where people, when they meet you, they're like, "Oh, where did you go to high school?" Like nobody cares where you went to college. They want to know where you went to high school. It's a very interesting place. And she's not from here. She's from the other side of the river over in Illinois. But I'm from right here in the heart of St. Louis. So I know a lot of people. Whenever we're at a game or something like that, and somebody comes up and they're like, "Oh, Brad, I haven't seen you. Like, how are things?" I'm like, "Oh, this is my kid's mother. This is Everly's mom." I've never in front of my children or in public referred to her as my ex-wife.
Mm.
Um, it just, that seems, despite it being a reality, it seems to have not necessarily a level of disrespect, but it seems harsh, if that's maybe the right word. Whereas this is Everly's mom, has kind of almost like a velvet glove type of feel to it. It's a little bit more gentle, um, and not inaccurate. Like I'm not giving anyone any false pretenses like we're still together or anything like that. It's just, here is a way to introduce her with a level of respect that she's due.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe my kids in a perfect world, they'll never notice that ever happened. But I hope that she sees that, and I can't control what she does. But if I set the expectation, like this is how we're going to treat each other in public, I can only hope that is followed and returned in kind.
Yeah, it's really quite profound. I never even thought about saying, this is my ex, or it has a harsh feeling, and it is wrapped in negativity. I think a lot of people automatically see that as, oh, you two don't get along, or you guys fight, or
Mm-hmm.
there's animosity between you. Whereas when you say this is my kid's mother, that kind of just deletes that immediate mind thing that comes in. I never even thought of that. And that's incredible advice to men who have shared kids with someone that they're no longer with, whether it's, in or out of marriage, doesn't matter. How you treat them says a lot. So you mentioned we're running a little low on time. So I definitely want to kind of talk about the kid aspect, because this is the heart wrenching part. I mean, we know that men that go through divorce, I mean, they struggle with identity. They struggle with, am I good enough? I mean, I'm sure the emotions are everywhere. Then you throw in that these beings that you created came from your DNA, are now you're worried that you're not going to be able to see them. And there's a lot of movement for men to have equal rights. And, we could really go down that road, but you lost some time with your kids. Walk us through that, and then maybe give us some advice for fathers who might eventually go through this or going through this now, where they can really be an advocate for themselves so that the duties remain shared. Because I think when you split, it hurts the kids more than anything. So the whole goal is to allow both parents to have, as much access as appropriate.
The nature of family courts, it's adversarial on its face.
It's too bad.
It and it's extremely unfortunate. And you're absolutely right. The push for like 50-50 being the starting point is definitely more there across the country than it is not, from what I've encountered in some of my others groups. And I'm in one, like the fathers' rights movement. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the horror stories I've read, like, and again, like my situation was less than ideal and full of its own set of pain points, but it certainly could have been a lot worse. But you're right. I lost some time with my kids. When everything finally imploded, I actually she filed a restraining order against me, and it was 2 days before my daughter's 5th birthday. Couldn't get a hold of her. That she turned out she was at the courthouse filling out all that paperwork. And this actually came up. We were just on vacation in Mexico, and we were with another newlywed couple, and there are a couple that I don't know as well as some of Courtney's other friends, so they had some questions, and I'm an open book at this point. It's all stuff
Mm-hmm.
that has happened to me. It doesn't define who I am anymore. It's just this happened. And so I was talking about it. I went and picked up Everly from school because I couldn't get a hold of her, and I brought her back up to the gym, and the cops showed up, and they actually took Everly from me there. And she was crying. It was sad. It was horrible. And there was solid 2 weeks before I got to see or talk to them again. So for those of you that are living through something like that, please let me be a beacon of light for you. Like, it can get better. Like, don't give up, don't stop, don't bail. Like this, it can get better. But going through that process of getting them back and getting time, it was almost as if the court was like, all right, now you got to prove like you're a capable father. I was like, on Wednesday, you had nothing to say to me about how I raised my kids. And now on Friday, like, you want me to prove to you that I still know how to do this?
Mm.
It was wild. And honestly, a situation I never thought I'd be in.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate that I had a lawyer that I could speak pretty freely with, and she helped me like say things the right way. But I dug my heels in hard. As soon as there was any time, the courts, nothing moves fast with government. So they're like, all right, we'll start and we'll do this for a month. And I'm like, that's unacceptable. Like, I won't get them for a couple hours a week for the next month. I was like, that's absolutely ludicrous. I was like, I want them half the time. And while I didn't get my request on the first time asking, I got more than they were offering. So it was almost like a standard negotiation. They start low, I
Right.
come in high, we meet in the middle. But I was adamant that I get my kids more. And I think particularly for fathers, that speaks volumes when it's done in that particular arena, because they tend to favor moms. They just tend to be more, they're motherly. Like, that's what moms are. And so they're like, all right, well, we'll let dad kind of have a little bit of time, and moms will be moms and raise kids. And I'm like, no, I want to raise my kids. I want to be the one who does that. And I was very headstrong about that point, and I didn't cave. And that was when we talk about fighting through something, that was the big fight. That was the big fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that all of these experiences were extremely painful, and I'm sure they were frustrating and defeating at sometimes, but I love hearing from you on the other end. I think that's really the whole thing here, is men seeing what happens on the other end. And the conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago, I was kind of prying, trying to figure out where your head was at. And I told you this, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
where is your head at? And it was clear to me the Brad Stone I know had made massive internal and personal growth. And I think a great message has been, if you're going through something like this, use this as a catalyst, use it as an opportunity to grow, plug into something like Jocko and groups, get on groups that support you. There's so much power in there. I know Brad's really leveraged groups. He does a really good job of posting his ridiculously heavy squats in our group, which is awesome. Dude's a freaking beast. You're obviously working out a lot. You own a gym. So I just want to give encouragement. Brad, you're kind of like a beacon, or like, hey, follow my lead here. These are where I messed up. Let's see if we can correct this. And I really appreciate that, brother.
I'm happy to do it. The most important thing that I am like I said it earlier, like lessons learned in blood are not soon forgotten. But if you're out there and you're listening to this and it sounds like, all right, in baseball, we always used to say, like at the post game meetings, like, if you think the coach is talking about you, he probably is. So like if you think this relates to you, like, don't repeat my mistakes, learn from them. I've already made them. I've already paid the price. Like, you don't have to. So learn from what I learned and take my lessons and build upon, some hard learned lessons here and say, all right, what can I apply to my situation? If it helps you, that's the absolute best thing that I can hope to offer someone is, a little bit of encouragement or some insight and maybe some direction. But please learn from my mistakes and do it differently than I did. And hopefully your situation will work out. And if it doesn't, well, look at me again. I went from, 2018, my gym was failing. I was, all right, I got to pay this employee, but I'm going to have to lie to my landlord and be like, oh, I thought the check was in the mail. Like, let me check and see, because I got to wait until somebody else's charge runs. I mean, I was real close to being like, all right, I effed this up too. But I fought through it all and just grind. It is not always fun and it's not always glamorous, but if you do the work, I am confident that things will work out for you.
Yeah. I love that message. I had a friend yesterday. He's like, us Americans or North Americans are just really bad at suffering. We think that, our internet's down and it's suffering, or, we go through a divorce and that's suffering. And the truth is we have it very, very good. So the more you can use suffering to grow and learn, the better. And you've been an amazing example of this, Brad. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Why don't you give a quick shout out for anybody who might be in your area for your gym? Because I think that would be cool.
Yeah, if you're in the St. Louis area or even the Columbia, the western part of Illinois, my gym is Stone Strength Systems. It's a small personal and group training facility. I like to say we're the Bruce Lee of fitness. If it works, we'll use it. If it doesn't, then we won't. But there's elements of powerlifting, CrossFit, physical therapy, and any modality that has some applicability and will help us get our clients where they want to go. We'll use it. It's a great place. We go from youth athletes to, I've got a couple of big leaguers that show their face here in the wintertime, all the way to my favorite consultation I've ever had with a new client was a grandma that came in and said her granddaughter got engaged and she wants to be able to dance at her wedding and not hurt. And we treat anybody from any walk of life. Everybody's welcome here. If you want to work, we want to work with you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'd come. If I lived close, I'd be there, brother. I've watched it over the years and I've liked your model from the beginning. Thanks again. If you didn't catch that, we're going to put all that stuff in the show notes. Don't you worry. Just check it out. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or any other thing, go do a rating. Give us a rating. Give us a review. And again, thank you, Brad, and everybody have an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.